that was published last night that Sheila Rush, actually this was pointed out to me by Tony, Sheila Rush from Barnham received a British Empire Medal, Church Warden of Barnham, and Levson Campbell from Aldborough also received British Empire Medal. I imagine there are others in the list from Suffolk who are attached to church in one way or another, and it's my practice to write to everybody in Suffolk who receives something in the honours, and so I will extend our congratulations to all of them. But I think that's wonderful. Can I say thank you to all of you? As Gavin said, this is the last of this synod, and thank you to all of you, because we go through the process of election and reappointments and so forth. So some of you will return, but others of you will choose not to, or perhaps not even be re-elected. You never know how these things work. But I'm hugely grateful to the enormous amount of work and commitment that is shown by everybody in this room, that through your engagement we are able to respond to the guidance of God's Spirit and to seek direction and wisdom as we move forward together as a diocese. So thank you to everyone. I think we should all applaud one another. And in particular, I want to thank Michael Wilde and Jonathan Ford as chair of the House of Clergy and chair of the House of Laity in the other order, who have served in that role through this synod, and both are stepping down so this is their last synod. I have been, as a new boy to synod life, I've learned a lot from them, and have been incredibly impressed with their the way in which they graciously control the process, and have been able to move things forward at the right sort of pace, in a way that we can all participate, but that we don't end up being dominated by the old familiar voices, and enabling people who perhaps don't necessarily step forward to speak to have the opportunity to do that. And I've been grateful through my time here for their wisdom and counsel, both in private and in more public settings. There'll be a chance to thank them in other ways when we meet as Bishops' Council, but right now I just want to thank them for their role in Synod. Thank you. And my last, this is a little notice really. We all know that Joe Hawes is arriving. He's actually moved in to be the new dean. His installation is July the 14th. Please keep him and Chris in your prayers, and we look forward to welcoming him into this body, into this new body, and as well as into all other aspects of the life of this diocese. I'm very excited, and I know a lot of other people are very excited that Joe is coming, and we know he will make an extraordinary difference to the life of all of us. So I'm very grateful to his willingness to serve in this way. Now, speaking of willingness to serve in this way, you may recall at the last Diocesan Synod that Mark Pendleton gave us an address, a very engaging address, an inspiring address about the work of Flourish and his commitment to seeing the flourishing of our communities across Suffolk, and how the Church was an intrinsic part of that vision. You may also remember that at that synod, Ian stepped down as chair of the DBF, and we had the opportunity to thank him for his extraordinary care and diligence through what have been quite tumultuous times. As a result of that, of course, I was left holding the baby. And so I thought, I'll ask Mark who he would suggest that I ask to be the chair of the Diocesan Board of Finance. Well, as they say, one thing led to another. And I would like to ask Mark to step forward to your applause for accepting the invitation to be chair of the Diocesan Board of Finance. What we thought we would do is, as a way of just introducing Mark, is we're going to sit down and have a little conversation in front of you. And that will be an opportunity for you to get to know a little bit more about Mark. Actually, the way we've scripted it, you'll get to know a little bit more about me as well. And as a way of welcoming Mark into this community. So, Mark, shall we?
Before we start, can I just say one brief word? And this isn't in the script. And I very rarely fall for what I've just landed myself in, but I thought I was wiser and greyer than that, but here I am, but I'm delighted to be here, and I would just like to thank, if I may, not only yourself, Bishop Martin, but Bishop Mike as well, and also Archdeacon Ian for handing over to me so willingly, and in such a friendly way, and also to Anna and Gavin and her team for helping me get into my sort of flattening out my learning curve a little, and also for the warmth of the welcome I've had. I'm hugely grateful, and I'm delighted to be part of the team and look forward to working with you all and to helping in whatever way I possibly can.
Mark, thank you. So let's start at the beginning. You and I were both born into church-going families. We both had fathers serving in the armed forces. Can you just tell us a little bit about your early experiences, and perhaps your early experiences of church?
Well, my early experience of church, as most of us, it began in the pram, or the pushchair, when in a parish in Hitchin in Hertfordshire. And my grandparents, who were in the northwest, my grandfather was a member of the Methodist Church. My grandmother was a very enthusiastic member of the Anglican Church. So my early years, post-pram and father's and mother's knee, was to go to the Anglican Church in the morning and then to the Methodist Church in the evening, which was a sobering experience. But those were my early experiences. And as you say, my father was in the Royal Air Force. And so we moved to Cyprus, and we went to church on Episcopi, the base there. And then I became a member of the choir. I don't think I could sing very well, but they needed people. You know how it is. You get the surplus on and off you go. Then I became a server, and then a reader. So I've been a lifelong member of the church. And how about, I'm very interested in your journey too, because...
it's similar. So I remember being basically required to go to church from, as you say, from pram days. I don't remember those days, but I do remember slightly later sitting in the pews, not really understanding what was going on, and refusing to sing, and which continued for some time. It may still go on at times. And my father was church warden I remember when I was 5, so quite young, I experienced his concerns and the responsibilities that he carried as church warden. We then moved 3 miles from Porchester in Hampshire to Fareham, and we had a new church and a new vicar arrived, and it was at that point that I think that my engagement increased, and maybe I even started singing hymns, because he was an inspirational vicar who I found somehow understood me and actually other youngsters, and was quite and inspired us to become more and more engaged. So that was a crucial point. And then the sense of vocation came, and that happened when I was 15, but I'm jumping the gun.
So we now get to us both when we have a choice of whether to go to church or not. That moment when mother or father says, "Are you coming to church today or not?" And the freedom of that decision, you think, "Wow, I could have, I don't have to go to church every Sunday." But actually, I did want to carry on going to church every Sunday, and clearly you were the same. I just felt at the time, why did I want to carry on going to church? Is that I'm a person who, my faith isn't worn on my sleeve. I like, as most things, to get quietly on with doing things. I don't like to run around shouting about it too much. So sitting on this stage talking about it isn't coming that comfortably. But on the other hand, I get why we're up here. But you decide you want to be part of the fabric of the church, because the church is just not the building and the services necessarily. It's also at the heart of communities. And what I have loved about the church is its extension into community. It is relating, whether you sit at the gate of the church on gift day, or you organise the church fete, or you run the Christian Aid shop for a week, whatever you do, the community rallies around the church. And the structure that I like about my life and the foundation the church has given me is all part of that. It's the church, it's the community, it's people, and it's the power of place. And I guess that's the same for you, although at this point our lives diverged, as we're about to find out.
So you went into, you thought about going into law.
Yes.
You want to tell us a little bit about that and what happened next?
Yes, so briefly. I was desperate to go into law and had a place at Leeds University, and then I then went into politics. And they say religion and politics don't mix, but in my case they kind of did. And I had 12 to 15 years working in politics, and you'll be kind enough not to judge me for this, because it was in the 70s, 80s and early 90s, so enough water's gone under the bridge for reflection and forgiveness. But I found when I reached that fork in the road, my vicar was gently trying to persuade me to go into the ordination. To be frank with you, I didn't think my faith was deep enough for that at the time. I was persuaded to go into politics. And then when I was in politics, I saw enough of it at a very senior level, sparing you the details. But I saw what life on the greasy pole was all about. I saw its impact on private lives and families. Somebody tried to persuade me to become an elected politician. And again, I reached another fork in the road. And I then realized that wasn't for me. Because there's too much yakety-yak in politics and not enough doing, in my view. So I then went into business, and I'm very passionate about the power of business, its responsibility and its power and influence to get into those areas of deprivation, into those communities, into people's lives, and make an impact. And it's not just writing a check, which is frankly the easiest thing to do if you have a budget. It is actually committing yourself and your business and those who work with and for you to go out into the communities, roll their sleeves up and get stuff done. So I decided, despite the encouragement to go into the church and into full-time politics, that I would devote my life to business, because I thought at the time, and I still think, that business can have much more impact on people's lives than even politics. Not church, but even politics. And so that's the course I took.
So I took a slightly different course.
Yes.
Having similarly been encouraged by my vicar, as I say, at the age of 15, to think about ordination, and then pursuing that, and have obviously pursued that ever since. And it's I'm just reflecting about the forks in the road that you're referring to there in your own life. I think the forks for me, once I'd been through the process of selection for ordination, which happened when I was 19, and then on to theological college and theological college, those forks tended to be decisions about what way God was calling me in terms of expressing my vocation. And it's been a rather sort of jagged route. So I've spent 11 years in the United States. I've done work in Central Church Office, but I've also worked in parishes and so forth. So it's been a curious route, but as I look back, I can see there have been points where I've made the decision, for example, do I return from the US or not? That was one of those forks in the road that have been, as I look back, and these things, we notice them as we look back, don't we? That the way in which those decisions have happened. You've said a bit about this, but I wonder if you can say how it continues, because there's a thread here, isn't there, in what you've told us just now. So the possibility of a call to ordination, but then looking at law, then going into politics and being committed to making a difference. And the sense, the thread for me is this call to public service. And I just wonder what then happened after politics and into business. What were the next steps for you?
Well, what business gave me not only was a very interesting and diverse career, but the ability to do other things. And most recently, as one or two in the room will know, I chaired something called the New Anglia Enterprise Partnership as one example of a number of things that I choose to get myself involved in. And that enabled the power of business to translate into tackling deprivation, tackling areas where skills and education need improving, tackling new investment in our communities, and really making a difference in people's lives in areas of this county and Norfolk that really need all the help and support they can get. So it comes back to the thread of what business has allowed me to do. And hindsight being the wonderful thing it is, you look back at these crossroads, because they're big events at the time, aren't they? But when you look back, you realise that somehow there's somebody's guiding you in the way that you're going to be. And I'm sitting here, I've just made another big decision in the last month or two to take early retirement. Emphasis, please, on the early. So you'll see that what I'm passionate about, I want to do more of. And so when the invitation, or was it an instruction, came from Bishop Martin to get more involved with the diocese, it's one of the things I really do want to give more time to, and such experiences I've got, I'd like to give more of it. And there are about several organisations in the county that I'm really passionate about, and I'm fortunate, very fortunate enough to be able to make a decision to take early retirement to devote more time to it. And so I think it's all adding up to where it is now, isn't it? And your course has been very different, but it's still added up to something very special.
And I think there is a similar, when we think about that thread, there is a similar motivation, which is about, in our terms of this diocese of talking about growing in God, it's the growing in influence part. How does the church make an impact on its local community? How do we make a difference to the lives of everybody? I know you see your role as chair of the DBF as helping us do that. I wonder if you want to say a little bit about what you think you've taken on in terms of the DBF.
Well, I'm discovering that day by day, to my enthusiasm or horror, I'm not sure which. But the one thing that in the bodies that I'm fortunate to serve on and be involved with, and particularly those to do with the economy and community and the power of place, which I said before, is, and I've looked around the room to see so many people are represented in those discussions and influencing and shaping those discussions. Very rarely do I see the church occupying one or more of those chairs. And yet, the church is at the heart of every community. It may not translate to bums on seats on Sunday mornings, but if the church calls for help or support, as in my village, and we have 12 hearty souls maximum in our church every Sunday morning, but the whole community rallies around to help and support, be it to help at a fete or for a financial appeal, or as a time of festival or celebration. You just find the church is at the heart of all those communities, and I think that needs to translate into influencing and into making sure the voice of the church is heard in a very compelling and enthusiastic way to help decisions, so people can understand that the church is at the heart of community and of life, And that needs to translate into a more active church and a more active and fulfilling communities of interest.
We're coming towards the end of this conversation. I just wonder if we've both talked about the importance of the church being actively engaged. We're both probably, when people look at us, probably see us as doers. And so my question, I think, for us to finish with is what is it that sustains your faith through this? What's the experiences that sustain you in this outward-looking, change-making activity?
I find that the church is, and as I say, I don't wear my faith on my sleeve, but quietly, the church is continuity, it's resilience, it is the power of good that we see, the examples we set, and whether life throws at me, and I'm sure it's the same, well, I know it must be the same with you, it throws challenges, it throws great joy, whatever the emotion, whatever the circumstance, you can sit back at the end of a day and be sustained by the word or by people in the church community who can challenge you, reassure you, nurture you, help you. There's always the foundation of church life and religion and the word of God that is sustaining. And I find so much about life is rushed and superficial. What religion grounds me in as what matters to me, my family, the church, my friends, the communities that I have the privilege to serve, and how that matters to me. So I see God in nature, in music. I feel closer to God in the beauty and resilience of nature as in church music as anything. And if my faith has any real depth, it is when I'm in those circumstances. What do you think?
I think it's very similar. Obviously I attend quite a lot of church services, and what I find for myself is what is sustaining is being able to participate in worship, and sometimes to be able to participate in a restful way, as you were describing, to just sort of soak it up. To the engaging in a pattern of prayer, an experience of prayer, finding places of silence and quiet and solitude. All of that is like the place where I touch what's deepest, where I find myself. I was just having a conversation with Steph a moment ago. She was talking about being in the presence of God and that sense, which then sends us out, because it's always outward looking, sends us out to do the things we do. And then those things that we find ourselves doing draw us back in. But there's this sort of circle that we inhabit back between, I used to in my previous talk about between the adoration and action. So moving between those two poles, but always in the context of a community, always part, we've talked about the people who inspire you and influence you, the examples and so forth, always in the context of community. I think that's absolutely fundamental and seems to be for both of us.
It is, and I absolutely agree with you, because the 1 hour and a half or hour and a quarter of the week that matters the most is when you go to church and you're sitting there. 99.9% of the time, I promise you, you focus on the word and the hymns and the sermon or the worship, the act of worship. But even if you just sit there and reflect on the week or the challenges you're going to face in the next week or the next 2 weeks, whatever happens during that hour, you always come out, you feel you can take on the world again. You know, you're strengthened. And the sun coming in through the stained glass windows on a spring Sunday morning, there's nothing better than that, than saying, right, now I can do this, and I will do this, and I can carry on making a contribution despite some people's best efforts to stop me. And you just think, you know, it is life-affirming. But I don't go to as many church services as you, but I still get as much out of it.
Mark, thank you very much indeed, and welcome.